Why do some connections grow into real relationships while others spiral into the obsessive grip of limerence? The difference is not exactly chemistry. It's not even about bad timing, and it's not exactly compatibility. The difference underneath all of it is safety. Without safety, your nervous system never settles. The bond can't cool down enough to build real trust. And instead of a relationship, what you get is obsession. In this video, I want to walk you through the most common ways that connections break down and show you exactly how the absence of safety turns them into limerence. Because once you can see this clearly, you'll understand why so many toxic dynamics like trauma bonds or situationships collapse into one-sided fixation, no matter how hot and faded they start out. Hi, I'm Madalena, and this is You Reclaimed. Around here, we spend a lot of time talking about how we reclaim our lives back from the grips of childhood trauma, from emotional dysregulation, and from anxiety. And we do this ongoing exercise because we want to live our lives on our own terms. I hope you stick around. Before we get into it, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any future videos. And if you're finding this content helpful, please give it a like. It really helps the channel grow. So, what is limerence exactly? For those of you who are new here, it's not some sort of mysterious flaw or weakness in you. Limerence is really just an overactive, extremely enthusiastic impulse to pair bond with another human being. At its core, it's based in something good and natural and normal for all of us, the drive to connect and to form a lasting, real bond with another person. But here's the problem. When that impulse doesn't land in the container, the box of a relationship that gives both people a feeling of safety, whatever that means for those people, then that impulse to pair bond basically mutates. And instead of settling into a steady connection, two people dating regularly, spending time together, moving in together, marrying, whatever is normal for this relationship, for these two people, instead of any of that, the obsession just ramps up. Why? Why does it ramp up? Because when your nervous system can't find safety, it doesn't calm down. It goes into overdrive. Instead of cooling off, it just keeps escalating. That's the point where what could have been a relationship transforms into limerence. Before we dive in, let me clarify something. In this particular video, I'm not talking about the completely one-sided limerence we sometimes discuss, like being limerent over a coworker who barely knows you exist, who you've never spoken to, or being limerent over someone you met once at church, or even over a celebrity. Those are real experiences, but they're not what we're unpacking today. In this video, we're talking about the kind of limerence that develops after the beginning of an actual real connection, where you've started engaging with someone in a romantic relationship of some sort, where there's a spark, there's some interaction, maybe even intimacy. But somewhere along the way, it stops feeling safe. And that's when things go sideways. That lack of safety starts messing with your nervous system. Over time, by reinforcing your need to get attention, to get validation, and to get reciprocity from this person, you slide into a full limerent episode. If the other person doesn't reciprocate your attempts at pair bonding, or if you're forced to pull back from trying to bond because something went wrong, then instead of turning into a relationship, it turns into limerence. So how does this happen? Let's walk through some of the most common scenarios. The most benign, or at least the least entangled cases, are when you're limerent over someone who is just fundamentally inaccessible. For example, a celebrity. Not benign in the sense that it can't be intrusive or disruptive or take over your life, but benign in the sense that there's little to no actual contact. And because of that, you're often able to keep the structure of your life intact without blowing it up, right? You're not going to leave your husband for a celebrity, not that likely. In these kinds of cases, limerence lives mostly in fantasy, right? In your mind. During your daily waking hours, you're in your head fantasizing about this person. It could be a celebrity, it could be a teacher or a mentor. It could even be a coworker that you admire. The common thread is that you regard this person highly. You probably put them in a pedestal. You look up to them, and the bond exists more in your imagination than in real day-to-day reality. But then we have other scenarios, like trauma bonds. One of the most common romantic scenarios that can dip into limerence or turn fully into limerence is the trauma bond. And let's clarify what that really means, a trauma bond, because a lot of people think a trauma bond is when two people are bonding over some kind of shared trauma. You've both gone through bereavement, the death of a spouse, the loss of a parent, some shared traumatic event you've experienced together. Or maybe you're both in recovery and you connect by talking about your mutual struggles. That's what many people assume is a trauma bond. It is not. A trauma bond is when one person is loving, wanting connection, seeking connection with the other person, attempting to deepen a connection, and the other person only gives access intermittently or sporadically. They give reciprocity sometimes, but not consistently. Sometimes they shut you down, they turn away, they withdraw, they ghost you for a week or two. So if you're the person who wants the bond, you learn that reciprocal love only comes sometimes. It comes sporadically, without warning, often unpredictably, so you cannot count on it. At one point, a small study was done at the University of Virginia with 47 female undergrads. The women were told that male students from two other universities had looked at their profiles, along with the profiles of another 15 to 20 women. Then each woman was shown 4 men's Facebook profiles that she believed were real, but they were actually fictitious. But hang on, because that's not really the important part. Here's what actually happened. The women were told different things about these men. Some women were told, this man likes you a lot, he's really into you. Others were told, this man thinks you're average. And for a third group of women, they weren't told anything. They didn't know how much the men liked them. And guess what happened? I think you have an idea. The women found the men in the uncertain group more attractive. They thought about them more because the uncertainty itself pulled more attention and created a stronger sense of attraction. Who'd have thunk it? So when you're in a trauma bond or in any situation where affection and reciprocity come in consistently, the uncertainty becomes part of the hook. Your nervous system treats it like, this person could really like me, or maybe not. Let me just stay a little bit longer and find out. And that's exactly how intermittent affection can keep you chasing and deepen limerence in a trauma bond, right? In a trauma bond, your addiction pathways are lit up at full capacity. You're essentially addicted to the intermittent sporadic access you have to this person, to the inconsistent bursts of love or affection or attention or whatever it is that they're giving you. Think of it as the classic casino or slot machine effect, right? You get the reward sometimes, but you never actually know when. So you just keep showing up and pulling on that thing, waiting to see what happens next, looking for the next hit. And this is exactly why people get stuck in trauma bonds. If you want a full breakdown of how to tell if you're in a trauma bond, check out my other video, Break the Trauma Bond, Love or Relationship with One Question. I'll link it below in the description. But I think it's pretty obvious why you can become limerent in a trauma bond, right? There's a lack of safety. I mean, the whole thing is a lack of safety. You want to bond with this person fully in a secure, steady, maybe predictable way, but the other person is just not giving you access. Boom, limerence, right? What more perfect recipe could you have than that? Another very common scenario that turns into limerence is the so-called friend zone, or its modern cousin, the situationship. I'm sure we're all familiar with this one. The dynamics just differ a little bit. Many women who don't want to date a man will put him in the friend zone, and men, or sometimes women as well, will put someone in the situationship zone, right? I mean, the roles can be reversed at any time, but in general, men often accept sex without commitment, while women sometimes accept emotional intimacy without commitment, right? Those are the more common scenarios. So in this particular scenario, let's say you're the man, you meet a woman, and it seems like maybe a relationship could form. You want to pair bond with this woman, you want the real thing. But for her, it doesn't work out for whatever reason, so she puts you in the friend zone. You still want to be with her, so you naturally start interpreting her neutral, ambiguous signals as signs that she might actually be interested in more. And suddenly you're limerent because you're scanning her for signals. You're twisting neutral interactions into proof, detectivizing every text or emoji, trying to convince yourself that it means more than just friendship. The same thing happens in a situationship. You hook up with someone and you want to fully pair bond. You want the whole thing, the dating, the shared meals, the waking up together, reading the newspaper in the mornings. But for whatever reason, the other person only wants sex. They only want intimacy in the most limited sense, like a Netflix and chill kind of arrangement, right? So it doesn't work out for both people. You become limerent and you start looking for signs that they do want more than just sex with you. You let yourself think that they must love you in some way. Maybe they've even said the words, but they don't actually do anything to show that love beyond being physically intimate. That's basically a situationship. And again, you become limerent because there's no safety in the bond, because what you're looking for is not being offered. And the unfortunate thing is, it doesn't have to be a trauma bond or a situationship or even an affair. Sometimes it's just a connection that starts off well. Two people meet, both genuinely want a relationship, and it looks like everything is moving forward, but then something goes wrong along the way. One person, usually just one, decides the connection doesn't actually feel safe for whatever reason, right? Safety is very subjective. The hard truth is that for one person, safety might mean exclusivity, knowing their partner is physically faithful. For another person, safety might mean financial security, knowing their partner can help take care of them. For someone else, safety might mean freedom and individuality, being able to express who they are without being judged by the other person. So we can't say that safety is the one size fits all. It's whatever your nervous system interprets as stability and consistency and trust. When things really go wrong is when one person decides the connection is not safe enough for them. And then that person usually is the one who becomes limerent, trying to create safety, searching for proof of safety, clinging to scraps of reassurance instead of walking away. And if you are stuck struggling with how to break the cycle of limerence, I made a whole video about what actually breaks the limerence spell. It's called What Breaks the Limerence Spell. I've linked it below. I have an entire series on limerence, and most of it is about how to break away from limerence. This point here is critical. It's one of the hardest lessons in limerence. The lack of safety is not something that you can compensate for by trying harder somehow. It isn't something that you can fix by changing your behavior. If safety isn't there for one person, the connection doesn't settle. Instead, it destabilizes. And that's when it can turn into limerence for one person. Through all of these scenarios, here's the takeaway. If the connection doesn't feel safe, it doesn't really matter what form it takes. Situationship, trauma bond, affair, or even a promising relationship that started strong. The result can be the same. One person ends up limerent. All of these scenarios are perfectly legitimate entry points into a deep, deep, and lasting episode of limerence. And a lot of us think that if something changes in our behavior, if we just cool down our feelings a little bit, if we gain perspective and lower our opinion of this person just enough, then maybe we'll be able to relate to them in a more natural way, let's say, right? We think if I can just tone down my extreme height of feeling for this person, I can be with them. I can make this work. But the chances of that are extremely slim because that's not the problem. You and your limerence are not actually the problem. The problem is that you've detected, most likely accurately, that this bond does not have enough safety for your nervous system to relax into relationship. The other person is making you feel unsafe, This could be for any number of reasons unique to what makes you, in particular, feel unsafe in connection. Or the other person is making you feel unloved or unwanted. The other person is showing you that they are untrustworthy or giving you the impression, sometimes subtly, sometimes clearly, that there is no safety in this bond. And that is how you end up in limerence. So if you're sitting here trying to figure out, what can I do to change my behavior? Forget it. Don't waste your time. You'll waste years of your life trying to fix a problem that isn't really yours to fix. The problem is not that you're limerent and how you can tone that down. The problem is that the bond itself is not safe enough to become a relationship, period. If it was safe, it would simply have become a relationship. If you were limerent, the other person was limerent, right? Both of you sat down over coffee and admitted, hey, we're madly in love with each other. Let's move in together. Then it would turn safe. You'd live together. You'd have some kind of security. It would be implied in that arrangement, right, of moving the relationship to the next stage, or you'd get married. Whatever it is, the commitment would create enough safety for your nervous system to calm down, and the limerence would, dissipate. Congratulations, you'd have a relationship. But if that doesn't happen, don't waste your time. Don't waste your time trying to figure out how to be less limerent, how to control your behavior, how not to act silly or too in love around this person. Forget all of that. You feel what you feel because the bond is not safe, period. You are not going to get more safety by controlling your own behavior. Again, always look towards the truth in limerence, not away from it. Until next time. Thanks for watching You Reclaimed. If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it with someone who might need it today. See you in the next one.